Why demographics are destiny. Today we discuss something that I get asked a lot because I do so much demographic analysis since, I'm a consultant, I work about, offshoring affairs and business affairs and financial affairs and in some cases dating affairs. Well, what happens is that people, the base of everything is actually people and how people interact with each other. And so I try like going like the root of the situation. When I started, doing my grad work in economics, in finance, and things like that, something that I noticed is that doesn't matter how good are you on the financial side, and the math, and the theories, and the economics, and Austrian School of Economics or Keynesian School of Economics, whatever may be the case. It doesn't matter if you don't know the psychology of people and how they interact. And depending on the particular, people, both on quantity but also on quality and how they interact with each other, that's when you have an economy. Because depending on quality plus quantity is that you can, I'm not going to say predict, but at least understand and pave the way on how a particular society, on this particular case, an economy and a market, will go through the near future. At least you can, let's say, track the map, track the path on how a society will go on the next, let's say, 10 years or so. Now, how a society this is just like demographics 101. Usually, in a particular population pyramid or a demographic pyramid, let's put one here, you want something like this, something shaped like an actual pyramid, because what you see, every tranche is the age and the representation of each age cohort on a particular population. So, on the lower end, you have the very young people, the newborn, the small childs, the teenagers, and so on. And the top of the pyramid, you have the elderly people, people on the 80s, 90s, sometimes even 100 years. And what happens is that there is this particular term in economics called economic active population that goes between 18 and 60 years old. Because the biggest driver of an economy is not their technology, is not their natural resources or their geographical location, is how much people do you have that are fairly young, but not as much, but they are very well trained. I'm talking on basic stuff like reading and mathematics and basic skills and things like that, that are gonna mingle, that are gonna start a family, and that is the biggest driver in order to create wealth. Because what will end up happening is that this particular couple of people, let's say, that get married and they have children and they want the best standard of living for their family, they're gonna work way harder in order to create wealth, through education, hard work, investment, creating business, entrepreneurship, whatever might be the case. And also, they have the pressure that they need to produce more in order to give a decent standard of living for for their children and their family. So they have to pay for school, they have to pay for different for education, they have to pay for clothing, basically, basic every need, plus, some, let's say, discretionary income, going to the movies, going to the beach. So that's expenses, expenses, expenses. So that driver for the family in order to create more wealth is actually taking care of the family. And that creates that particular ingenuity in order to either be better on your career or your business, be more entrepreneurial, or be more of a risk taker on the, let's say, on the investment world. One of the individuals that are very concerned about this is actually Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. And he actually, we just heard that he got his 13 children already. So, well, good for you, Elon. Wish the best. And he actually concerned that in most of the world, the fertility rates are dropping significantly, especially in the Western world. And that happens is because you need population, and in order to maintain the population levels, you need a fertility rate of 2.1 births per woman. And right now, depending on the country, we are on 1.5, 1.6, 1.3, and in some cases less than one, like in South Korea. So what will end up happening on these particular countries, if don't take measures, is that you are going to have way more elder people, way less young people that are going to try to, innovate and being entrepreneurial and things like that. So basically, if there is not a societal motivation in order to actually create something from scratch, the society will just collapse. The best case that we have, study case that we have on this particular regard, demographics and economics, is Japan. Japan, beautiful country, beautiful culture, actually one of the most prominent countries in history. However, here's what happened, and let's go just quickly to the 80s. I'm not going to cover the history of Japan. Well, anyways, on the 80s, Japan was the second largest economy in the world, and it was poised to overthrow the US as the biggest economy in the world, just like right now we are in China. And that's why I'm mentioning Japan, because let's see if China does the same. Well, anyways, uh, so what happened is that Japan tried to keep up, and Japan was on a roll between the, let's say, the 60s and the 80s regarding economics, macroeconomics. And they also, made some risky moves on how they manage their macro financial situation. They issue a lot of debt, the Japanese central bank, the BOJ. And at that particular moment, just the Imperial Gardens, the real estate of the Imperial Gardens of Tokyo, it was worth more than entire real estate market of California in the US, one of the richest states in the US. Also, the luxury luxury district in Tokyo of Ginza, the price was the real estate over there was $1.5 million per square meter. So you can pinpoint how Japan was. So it was on a roll, very expensive place, very big economics. Now, everything just first collapsed. The Nikkei collapsed on the early 90s. We have here the chart. And it took around 30 years in order to recover those particular levels. So basically, the Japanese economy got stagnated. First, of course, for macro financial issues with the BOJ, but most of the issue is that the population, the demographics of Japan collapsed. You had less people in order to be more creative, more entrepreneurial. I'm talking the young people, the next generation, that it was poised to sustain that particular economic growth. That it was unsustainable, but at least the new generation after the 90s was poised to be at least kept up a little bit with such particular growth. And that did not happen. Of course, it's not only about demographics, it's a cultural thing, it's a financial thing, many things on how the Japanese economy works. But the demographics are actually one of the things that are affecting the Japanese economy and this particular lack of growth on the past 30 years. South Korea is on a even more dire situation on that regard, and we are seeing the same macroeconomic outlook for the South Korean economy and demographics. Let's see here the demographics pyramid of South Korea is dreadful. It has one of the worst demographics in the world. And also, this is a vicious cycle because the more advanced the society becomes, less likely they want to mingle and have children of their own, for not only for keep up with the fertility rate, the replacement rate, the 2.1 births per woman, but also even more in the future. So it's something that is dreadful. So we are seeing collapsing fertility rates, especially in countries like Japan, in South Korea. And also, sadly, what happens is that in economies and let's say in regions and nations of the world where the demographics are terrible, like in Japan and South Korea regarding the demographics pyramid, is that less young people, the less younger people that you have, uh, it's less likely that you're going to have more marriages and more children and things like that. What happens? We explain this. Let's go with the evolutionary psychology part of this explanation. Is that women have this particular tendency, this particular characteristic, psychological, called hypergamy. Usually, they want to only mingle and mate with the best men. What happens is that women have this particular perception, regardless if they are on how they are on the pecking order. They always want the best. It doesn't matter if you are the best female or you are on the middle of the pack or you are on the bottom of the pool. Still, you want the best. You know, the rich, the successful men like that. So what ends up happening is that also females are more attractive when they are young, between 18 to 30 years old. Meanwhile, females don't care about the age of the men if they are rich and successful. So let's say on these countries like Japan and South Korea, a 50-year-old man that is very successful can date women from under 30s and 30s. And it is what it is. I'm not saying it's politically correct, but it is the case. So more competition for the younger men. They are, late teens, early 20s, and so it's less likely that these particular couples mingle and couple and get married and have children, and then it's a vicious cycle year after year, decade after decade, and the end result is a population collapse. Now let's look the silver lining of this thing, because there is a lot to be grateful as humankind on as a citizen of the world, if you allow me to use that cliche, is that what happened is that we have an excellent standard of living compared to the average citizen 100 years ago. And actually, you and I, that we are, both you are watching this video and I'm making this video, I recording this video, we have orders of magnitude better standard of living compared to kings and royalty just a couple of 100 years ago. We have internet, we have electricity, running water, access to education, to medicine, to healthcare, transportation, luxuries like a PlayStation, something like that. Yeah, I have a PlayStation. Yeah, sue me. Well, anyways, you can get the point. So we have a bunch of access to a bunch of goods and services that were, science fiction just on the 80s. And right now we have it, and we have a better standard of living. Our life expectancy is actually higher and grows year over year throughout time. So we have way better quality of life. Of course, we have issues in the world, like the war in Ukraine and the Middle East, and issues that happen in Africa. But actually, even in Africa, I'm talking on the average. So take it with a grain of salt. Even the standards of living over there, the standard of living. So the healthcare, the goods and services that you see in Africa. So the average sub-Saharan African citizen has, on average, a better standard of living that they used to have just 20 years ago. Still a hard place to, compare to, let's say, a Western nation, Western Europe. Still, the standard of living overall have increased on the past, let's say, 50 years, 100 years, something like that. Many people are doing, gloomy, doom and gloomers on that regard, that we are going to collapse as a society, things like that. Actually, I'm more positive. We're going to have a better society that we have right now. I'm sure that, of course, with a couple of hiccups every now and then. And, there are also very smart people working hard in order to solve this particular crisis through technology, through psychology, through events, through education, through, well, I'm not gonna say I'm part of those guys, but I'm trying, to chip in, to do my best in order to also collaborate on the solution, or at least be part of the solution. So I think actually the world is gonna be a better place on the next couple of decades, and with a couple of hiccups, bad things are gonna happen. Also, I mean, statistically, it will happen, but I like to be I like to be positive for the future, and we're gonna see a bunch of marvels in the world. And demographics is something that, one way or another, we are gonna find a solution eventually. Thank you for watching Continental Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media, and if you want to work with us, continentalinsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.